Good morning, guys. My name is Braxton Gunter. I am the Sales Development Manager for WinField United, covering Southwest Indiana, mainly for the seed portion of Superior Ag's business. Whenever they ask people to talk at these kind of things, they really want experts. So I have no idea why I'm standing up here, but I do know why Mr. Darin Holder is standing up here. He is an expert in more than one way, and one of those is because he lives more than 50 miles away. So, Darin, I'll go ahead and let you introduce yourself.
Yeah, I live 250 miles away. But my name is Darin Holder. I'm an agronomist for WinField, covering basically the southern U.S. and the eastern U.S. So I reside in as far west as you can go in the state of Kentucky.
Nice. So with that, I want to lead off with a statement that we heard from an internal meeting here talking about corn traits. We have more innovation coming in the next 5 years than what we've had in the past 25. That's important, so I'm going to say that again in case you need to write that down. Wink, wink. We have more innovation coming in the next 5 years than we have had in the past 25 years. So for me, that's exciting because we have a lot more opportunity out there to control some of these pests, tagged along with the right hybrid, so it sets us up for success. Because what is one of the most important decisions that you can make for your farm? Somebody tell me. I'm going to give you a hint. We're at the seed stop, so... Seed, perfect. Because, and you guys know this, whenever you have a bag of seed, your highest yield potential is before the seed even leaves the bag. Because the second that your seed leaves that bag, Mother Nature's throwing everything in the kitchen sink at it to make it fail. For everything else in the environment to thrive, the seed has to go backwards. So one way that we can combat this with the right hybrid is with these seed traits, right? And so here I have a very basic, very simple, very expensive Lego demonstration because I keep telling everybody I've got the mind of like a 3-year-old and I can't look at this chart and tell you what this means. So I went and bought these nice Legos and I broke them out here and all of the basic traits that we have, and I'll tell you the first 4 here are going to come in a bare bag. This is going to come in a cropland bag, or this is going to come in a decal bag out of Superior Ag. The last 2 are going to be Power Core Enlist. These are Corteva traits. This is going to come in a cropland bag for Power Core Enlist as well as a Brevant bag. And then Power Core Ultra Enlist comes straight from Brevant out of Superior Ag. So mainly 90 to 95% of what comes out of Superior Ag is either going to be a Double Pro or a Tricepta. These are going to be the most basic modes of actions that we have. So we'll talk through them, and before I get started, our gray blocks are going to be your herbicide tolerances, and then your green blocks are above modes of action. Your yellow blocks are below modes of action. So some of these you see have green and yellow, so it's important to know we have above and below ground protection for those traits. So we'll get started here with a Double Pro. When I think of Double Pro, I think of how many? Very good. I was going to say, it wasn't 1 and it wasn't 3, so you guys caught on a lot faster than the first group. So we have 2 modes of action for BT2P, BT Double Pro. So double, think 2. How many modes of action do we have for Double Pro? 2. Above ground. That's important to know. Above ground. And so the way that I have these laid out here, they build off of one another to get to the next one, right? So if I have a Double Pro, also I want to make sure we know, these cry traits are going to be modes of action for a corn borer or an earworm. So this is going to be ear protection. It's important to know because when we transition into a Tricepta and we have 3 modes of action above ground, so when I think Tricepta, I hear tray, and how many is tray? 3, exactly. So we take our, Double Pro here, and we take the Double Pro and we add Viptera, wherever that is, Viptera, and it's important to know that this 3rd mode of action above ground is vegetative protection. So this pest can eat any of the vegetation on this plant and kill it, whereas these are earworm protection, right? Everybody following? Okay, so we have our Tricepta, so we got our 3 modes of action. I also want to make sure I said this, I didn't, that we have glyphosate tolerance with Tricepta, and we have glyphosate tolerance with Tricepta. I think I said that twice. Double Pro and Tricepta.
Hey, Braxton, now... Hey, Braxton, before you move on, also think about this. With Double Pro, you've got one mode of action for corn borer, you've got one mode of action for earworm.
Yep.
With Tricepta, you're going to 2 for both. Because your VIP is all lepidopteran insects. So it's everything that goes from a moth to a worm. Right? So it's western bean cutworm, black cutworm, corn earworm, and southwestern European corn borer. And you've got VIP brings all that. So now it gives you 2 modes of action for corn borer, 2 modes of action for your corn earworm.
Good. You'll have to excuse me because if I walk behind this, you'll lose me. I'm too short, the blocks are too tall. So if we go to VT4 Pro, like I said, we're building off of one another. We take this Tricepta, the 3 modes of action above ground, and we add some below ground protection. Looking at these blocks, how many below ground modes of action do we have? 2, right? So we have this Yield Guard rootworm for protection as well as the new RNAi technology. VT4 Pro is going to be fairly new compared to everything else that we have other than the PowerCore Enlist, PowerCore Ultra Enlist. So this one, last year, what we have, $114.99 decal, and it did really well, right? Well, that has a VT4 Pro trait attached to it. So now, moving on, we would have a Smart Stacks option right here, but I ran out of money for my blocks, so I skipped Smart Stacks and I jumped to Smart Stacks Pro. But one thing that is important to notice is Smart Stacks looks very similar to this. It is just missing this RNAi piece. So Smart Stacks is this right here without the RNAi. It's got the same 2 herbicide tolerances, glyphosate and glufosinate. It's just missing this other below ground mode of action. So now that we have Smart Stacks Pro, we have these same 2, glyphosate and glufosinate, and then we have the 3 modes of action above ground. So we take a Double Pro and then attach a Herculex corn borer to it. So we've got the 3 modes of action above ground. So how many modes of action above ground? 3. And how many below ground? 3. Smart Stacks, right? It's easy to follow. I will mention, with the Smart Stacks Pro and the Smart Stacks, you guys probably won't see a whole lot of that out. Now, you may not, but I'm going to say you probably won't because we don't really have the corn-on-corn that other places have. We don't have a lot of corn rootworm pressure. I'm not saying you don't have any because everybody's farms differs, right? But from a broad perspective, you probably will not see a Smart Stacks Pro or Smart Stacks. Moving on, so that concludes our our Brevant. I'll get it right here in a minute. Bear. PowerCore Enlist is coming out, like I said, a Brevant bag or a cropland bag this year. You have 4 herbicide tolerances over the top. You've got glyphosate, glufosinate, Enlist, and FOPS. And you also have 3 modes of action above ground as well. So that is important to know. You have your Double Pro and your Herculex corn borer as well. Building off of the PowerCore, we move to PowerCore Ultra Enlist, only in Brevant bag. Right, Jonathan? That's right. So we have the same 4 herbicide tolerances up top. And it's the same as PowerCore Enlist, we just add Viptera. So we add that vegetative protection. Anybody have any questions over that? Perfect. So I did a great job explaining that. That's what I wanted to hear. So we'll talk about what's kind of coming down the pipeline here. Our sheet here, our poster board, is a little bit out of date. We have a lot of this already. We see the chrome, we see the vor seed, we have the PowerCore. It's the trait right there. We have Smart Stacks Pro, VT4 Pro. What's coming down the pipeline here that's important is the Preceon piece. We hear a lot of talk about the Preceon. We have it in answer plots. We're going through a lot of testing. In my opinion, one of the most important things that we deal with Preceon is if some of your fields, what does regular stature corn do when it gets really droughty? What does it do? It shrinks, right? It gets short. So if we have Preceon short corn and we put it through a lot of stress and it gets even shorter, well, you're not going to be able to harvest it. You just wasted it, right? So we got to make sure that our ear height is at least 24 inches off the ground. So that is where we're testing it to make sure that we are still there. Is that right, Matt? All right. Next, coming down the pipeline later this decade is going to be the new 2 BT traits coming for rootworm protection. So that will be here at the end of this decade. Also, following that, we'll see the HT4 and the HT5 corn as well traits. At about the same time, if maybe just a little bit later, we will see the new corn borer trait as well. So, does anybody have any questions on that before we swap over to meats? Man, that's 2 in a row that I've killed. All right, Darin, I'm turning it over to you.
All right. So I think about, I sit here thinking, listening to Braxton talk, is like, why does this matter to you as a farmer? Really, it matters to make sure you got the traits to give you the protection that you need. But also it matters is when you're comparing products and what they cost, if I'm comparing this one to that one down there, there should be a price difference. Fair? But you need to know as a consumer, what are you paying for? And do you need that? Do you need the incremental trait? And I will tell you this, one of the worst things you can do is to go take and buy a trait package that's not in the germplasm that fits your acre. Just buying the trait package. That's a bad day. We did that a lot in soybeans when Roundup Ready 2 came out. It was Roundup Ready 2, 7 to 11% more yield. Everybody wanted Roundup Ready 2s, and we didn't have the genetic diversity to take it to pretty much any soil type that wasn't a good mixed dirt. When you started putting on the extremities, whether it was sand or it was clay, we saw those things really fall apart. So making sure that you get the right variety, the right hybrid from a corn perspective on the right acre gives you the opportunity to let these things express themselves. Okay, so keep that in mind. Now, soybeans, I was going to go do what Braxton did and buy blocks. However, today, they'd all been gray. So I was going to be a smart aleck, because I kind of am, naturally. My wife says so. I was going to go to Walmart last night and buy some miniature blocks, because I don't have the budget that Braxton has, right? Sales always has a more budget than agronomy. But I didn't do it. I didn't want to waste my time, because you couldn't read, Sharpie writing on a little block. But before we really get into what soybeans, where we're at today and where they're going, I look around this crowd and I say that I'm going to say a fair amount of you have been in agriculture as long as I have. Is that fair? Okay. So what happened in the late 90s, early 2000s that absolutely changed the way we farm? Roundup Ready beans was one of them. What else? BT corn. Right? Those were the first 2 widely adopted transgenic traits that we used. Okay, my point of that is they're still great traits. Okay, is Roundup what it used to be? No. Is it still a dang good chemistry that kills lots of things? Yes, it is. Yes, it is. And from a soybean perspective, I say all we've got is gray today. What you're going to see in the next 5-10 years on what's been released, I don't know what else they're working on that they haven't released, but the trait providers today, what they've released is it's 95% stacking more gray on top of gray. Okay, to give us weed control options, which is not a bad thing. Okay, now that does give me pause, because we'll talk about one here in a minute. We'll talk about mesotrione. How many acres of corn get mesotrione today? Halex, Callisto, Cinerate. Fair amount, right? I don't want meso all of a sudden to become my primary weed killer in soybeans, because it's my primary post-weed killer in corn, right? But my point is, as this thing progresses, you're going to have options. You're going to have a lot of good options to stack different traits, to use different things to go solve your problems. Okay? Today, I think about just the progression of traits in soybeans. We started Roundup Ready. We went to Roundup Ready 2. That was the 7 to 11% more yield that if you put it in the right spot. Okay, we're going to reiterate that. And then we went to Roundup Ready Flex, which was dicamba. And then we went to Extend Flex. And E3 come along in that sometime right after dicamba, right before Extend Flex. So what we've done the last 10 years is we've been stacking these traits that allow us to spray other crop protection products over our soybeans that we hadn't been able to. Are any of them bulletproof? No, I don't care. I don't care who provides it. I don't care if it's E3 from our friends at Corteva, if it's Extend Flex from Bayer, or none of them are bulletproof. Okay. There's nothing in this pipeline that's coming that's going to be bulletproof either. Okay, we still have to do our due diligence. We still have to think about, okay, here's the way I like to look at it as an agronomist. What's my weed spectrum? Okay, how many modes of action do I have on it today? Before I even get there, when does it emerge? When is it a problem? Right, where I live, we've got palmer. We don't have water hemp. We've got palmer. It stayed north of the Ohio River for the most part. There's some pockets that have it, but where I live, it's all palmer. which made Mare's Tail look like a punk, just to be real honest with you, okay? Well, I don't go out and do a whole lot. We're planting a lot of beans in April now. March, if the good Lord will let us, right? Well, guess what Palmer's has not done at that time of year and is not going to do? Germinate, right? It's going to be June, right, before it germinates, right? So I've got to think about that. Hey, what weed do I have? When's it going to germinate? What's the tools in my toolbox? The traits that are coming are just going to give you more tools in the toolbox. It doesn't mean all of a sudden, okay, well, here's what we don't need to do. And this is the hard part, especially with the economic times we're in at the farm gate, okay? And I get that. I farm a little bit. I understand this completely. It don't look good, okay? What we don't want to do is say, okay, if I stack these 2 or 3, it's going to be my cheapest weed control on the acre. It may not be the right weed control. And the most expensive weed control on the acre is the one that doesn't work. Right? There's a reason why everybody has put their money, I'm talking about the basics, the Cortevas, the Bears, the Syngenas. They've put the majority of their R&D money on traits and soybeans to be weed control specific, because what's the number one yield robber in soybeans? Weeds. It's pretty simple. Right? So if that's the number one yield robber, let's go after that and provide that solution. That's what they've done. Okay, now, check my time here. I get long-winded, so Braxton's got to rein me in. So let's talk about where we're at today and where we're going. Couple things. Viconic, I don't know if you've heard that yet. It was called HT4 for a while. It's now called Viconic. That's the next trait package, if you will, that's going to come from Bayer. You're probably going to see that in 27. I don't know, it's going to be a decent size launch. I mean, they think they'll have 80 to 100 candidates to release from maturity group O to 7. That's a pretty good size launch if you've been around very long. That's a nice size launch. What Viconic is, that's the trade name for it. That is basically taking what we have today with XtendFlex, which is what? Glyphosate, glufosinate, and dicamba, and that's adding 2,4-D and mesotrione to it. So the 4 doesn't mean how many modes of action it can tolerate. The 4 is just the herbicide-tolerant event, okay? But that's what's coming. Now, you might say, okay, well, there's no dicamba label. Who cares? Well, there's a whole lot of people that are very confident that by 26 we'll have an over-the-top dicamba label back. And I don't know about y'all, but where I live, I like that. I like personally, in a cotton world, because I live in a cotton world, I'd much rather have dicamba as I would 2,4-D, because what 2,4-D will do to cotton. 2,4-D is to cotton what dicamba is to non-dicamba tolerant soybean. I mean, you literally can open a jug in a cotton field and kill half acre. Right? It's very, very sensitive, right? So I know that, hey, dicamba, and I'll be honest with you, probably later in the, well, you can't go late, but certain times of the year, I think it works a little better on what I'm chasing in my market, which is Palmer Amaranth, than what 2,4-D does. That's my opinion as an agronomist, okay? So that's what Viconic's going to be. And so you'll be ready to see that. You'll hear more about it this fall, next spring. If it gets EPA approval, you'll see it in some plots. And supposedly it's going to be ready to sell in 27. And that gives us some pretty good options. Now, while that's going on, they're also releasing a new herbicide called Conventro, which is a mixture of diflufenicin and metribuzin. I think it's called Conventro Duo. I couldn't find exactly what it was. But diflufenicin is specifically going after water hemp and Palmer Amaranth from a pre-perspective, which is good. So you got multiple solutions here that aren't just traits. Now, as I go down this map, you'll see HT5 and HT6. So basically, just like corn, HT5 is taking 4 and adding PPO resistance to it. So now you think about some of the PPOs, and I don't know which PPO, if it'll be PPO specific, will it just be saflufenicil? I don't know. But I think about that molecule specifically, man, that's a dang good molecule. Sharpen, right? And to be able to go out post with that type of molecule, I mean, that gives me, and I've got meso in there, I've got options on some, and glufosinate, and dicamba, and 2,4-D. I've got some really nice options to control weeds post. And depending on where I fall on the calendar, what the EPA does with the dicamba label for 26, if we get it, and the restrictions that they put on it and the states put on it, I've got options. I like options. Because then I can think about, okay, what's the specific weed species I have? How big is it? What's my neighbor's got? Which is the least risky and that gives me the best efficacy? And I can go make a decision. That's a good place to be, okay? Right behind HT5 is HT6, which is taking HT5 and adding icafolin. I'm pretty sure I'm not pronouncing that right, but that's the way it's spelled. ICAFOLIN. So I'm going to call it icafolin, right? I used to pronounce famecifin, fomasafin, and I was wrong there. right? You know, there was a, I'll tell you a story later about there was a book in the Bible I mispronounced for 30 years, but it is what it is. Icafolin is a new mode of action. Okay, we're talking about late 20s, early 2030s here. Non-selective herbicide. Okay, this will have icafolin tolerance, HT6 will. So now, post-emerge, what do I have? I got 6 mode of actions. Okay. Hey, and there's going to be tank mixes. You'll see new chemistries come out. Here's the whole point of all of this. What Braxton talked about and what I've talked about. Does it sound simple? Sure ain't. It ain't simple. And it's even, you take someone like myself, someone like Braxton, this is what we get paid to do, is to figure this out, right? You pay the guys at Superior to help you figure this out. You think about how many things at the farm gate you ride herd over today versus 20 years ago. It's a lot different. Do you have time to know all this? It's going to be tough. Hopefully you can, but not to know all this, know everything else. You're going to need help, and my point is there's people that will help you sort through this. Okay? At the end of the day, here's what it comes down for me. Which one yields? Now, if I've got a horrible weed infestation and I've got to control those weeds and I can't do it any other way, I'll let that trait package make my decision on variety at that point. But if I can control those weeds any other way besides the trait package, and it's what I need from a yield perspective, yield wins. Elevator buys beans. They don't buy how good your weed control is. But the better your weed control is, the better the beans you got. Now, we look at our friends from Corteva. Hey, we've got E3 today, which is glyphosate, glufosinate, and 2,4-D. They've got several partnerships going on with BASF and MS Tech, and they're looking at coming out with a glyphosate, glufosinate, 2,4-D plus isoxyflutol, which is balance, and then also a soybean cyst thing, and then down the road also having PPO. Okay, so no HPPD today. But there's a rumor that may carry HPPD. So they may have HPPD as well. I don't know. Time will tell. Okay, time will tell. Bottom line is you're going to have options. And there are going to be some good options. But if we're going to keep those options viable as long as we need them to be viable, who's got skin in that game? All of us. You do, I do, everybody in between does. Everybody's got skin in that game. Okay? I will say this. When I graduated college and got my first job retail, that is when mare's tail first started showing resistance in my part of the world, West Kentucky. So we're talking about 99, 2000. Okay? Soybeans were $4.50 to $5.50 a bushel. Corn was $1.60, $1.80. Right? Counter-cyclical LDP payments is what kept us in the black. If y'all remember those days, you may not. You don't look old enough, but you remember. Right? I mean, that's what kept us in the black. I remember before, like if you had resistance on your farm, the hardest thing I could do to sell to him that farmed right beside you was to sell him more dollars per acre on a herbicide program for resistance that he didn't have yet but that you had. But guess what he was going to have the next year? A problem. Economically, we're in some very similar times right now. Okay? I'm encouraging you as an agronomist, be smart. Be smart. $2 or $3 more now to control a weed is well worth it on the backside. A guy who used to run our company used to always say, don't be penny wise and dollar dumb. Right? I've never forgot that. Don't be penny wise and dollar dumb. Okay? So, hey, we've got some, and I'll be honest with you, first time I've ever seen Trump socks, I kind of like it. That's good stuff. That's good stuff. We're finished, so any questions for Braxton and I before we've got about a minute left before it's time to depart, and we'll take any and all questions you have about traits. Or Braxton's not married, so if you got a daughter you want to, right there, we might auction Braxton off, right? We got all kinds of options. Acres, brothers, cash. That's what you need to know when looking for a young lady.